Shabbat Shalom. Before I begin speaking, I want to let you know that I will be speaking about pregnancy loss and abortion. There are many people in this room, I'm sure, who have feelings of grief and loss and trauma and sadness around these topics from your own experiences, from desires to become pregnant or more. We as a people, as Rabbi Witkowski just spoke about, have also just experienced a major loss of young children, the Bibas children. My sermon will be about how Judaism prioritizes the health, the physical and mental health of the birthing parent. So in that vein, for those who feel they might need to leave to take care of themselves, I encourage you to do what feels best for you. When Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court in June of 2022, I was living in Washington, D.C., and it was one of the heaviest days that I've experienced in my life. I was working with college students, and two who I'd become particularly close with, who only had started to find their Jewish identities through Hillel in college, came to me really scared. They asked me, "Lily, does Judaism agree with this Supreme Court ruling that we can't get an abortion, whether medically necessary or by choice?" I responded with a verse from Parshat Mishpatim, the Torah portion that we read this week. This Shabbat, Parshat Mishpatim, holds special significance in our modern context. For several years now, Jewish communities across denominations have designated it as Reproductive Shabbat because it contains one of our tradition's key texts about pregnancy and personhood. The Torah says, "When men fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined accordingly, as the woman's husband may exact from him. But if other damage ensues, the penalty shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, etc." This teaching teaches an important legal distinction. If someone accidentally causes a miscarriage, they must pay a fine. However, if the pregnant person is injured or killed, the punishment is much more severe, possibly even life for a life. This difference is very significant because it shows that the Torah does not treat the end of pregnancy as murder, which would require the death penalty. Instead, the Torah focuses on the real-life impact of the pregnant person rather than debating the abstract ideas about when life might begin. This foundational text shapes how Judaism approaches questions of reproductive health. It establishes a clear principle. We must prioritize the lived experience of the person at risk. This understanding has guided Jewish legal thinkers for generations, as we can see in the writings of some of our greatest scholars. When the Rambam wrote about abortion laws in the 12th century, he ruled that whenever the life of a pregnant person is in danger, abortion is permitted, and his language is very strong. To Rambam, a dangerous fetus is considered a rodef to the birthing parent, meaning one who actively seeks to kill the other. A rodef is someone or something that is causing harm or might kill the pursuant. So to Rambam, there's a possibility that the fetus can reach the severe level of being a rodef, which Jewish law permits and requires to stop by any means necessary. Rambam understood the medical implications of abortion, that the birthing parent's life could be at risk should they choose to continue the pregnancy. This isn't just about a legal technicality. It's a statement about whose life and experience matters most in a dangerous situation. As medical knowledge grew and social conditions evolved, our tradition's understanding, too, continued to evolve. By the 18th century, Rabbi Ibn Ayyash recognized that threats to life can take many forms. He wrote, "Any dangers to the birthing parent, whether they could not handle more children, or the new child might be born to a dangerous situation, or the mother or the birthing parent is in danger for any reason, medication should be used to remove any potential danger." Rabbi Ibn Ayyash recognized that emotional and psychological effects could also be a very valid reason to choose abortion. Both of these legal thinkers, Rambam and Ibn Ayyash, do not mention doctors or the non-birthing parent in their responsum about abortion care. Rather, a great deal of compassion and care and concern is given to the one in danger, the one truly in need of care. But it's not just in these specific texts about abortion that our tradition centers the human experience. It's not a modern liberal innovation, but a continuation of Judaism's longest standing approaches to questions where life and death are concerned. From biblical times and through the medieval period and into today, Judaism privileges human reality, human emotions, and human well-being, rather than theoretical conversation. Theoretical conversations around topics as sensitive and emotional as abortion are dangerous. Much of this discourse that I've presented thus far is focused on justification, on proving that our tradition permits, citing legal sources that allow it, on defending our right to choices for our body. These sources are crucial, but in fact, they're only the beginning of the fight, not the end. Dr. Michal Raucher, a scholar of Jewish bioethics, challenges us to move from justification to justice. We know that our traditional sources establish permission for abortion. But more fundamentally, they actually reveal a radical approach to religious ethics, one that centers lived experiences of the person that's most impacted. In the sources I've presented today, which are far from all of the sources on this topic, we see a clear evolution. The Torah begins with a case of accidental miscarriage, treating it as a matter of civil damage rather than murder. Rambam expands this to actively require abortion when the pregnant person is at risk, establishing that their life and well-being is paramount. Ibn Ayyash goes further, recognizing that danger includes not just physical threats, but also emotional, psychological, and social ones too. So when those two students in DC on this very heavy day asked me what Judaism says about abortion, I immediately responded with the verses that I read to you today. But what they were asking for wasn't halachic justification. They were scared. They wanted to understand how their bodies, how their physical and emotional wellness are centered in Jewish law. And so I changed my answer, because what they were saying was, "Rabbi, I'm scared for my own health and well-being." Reproductive Shabbat exists to remind us that we must always center the birthing parent's experience and the potential hardship of such experience. Thank God we live in a state with a Jewish governor where abortion is protected right now, but that's not true in many other states. When it comes to reproductive justice, there's so much to fight for. And when we fight for justice, we must move beyond merely permitting or justifying abortion. These abstract principles that justify mean little without understanding their impact on real lives, on members of our own communities who have faced these challenging decisions. One way to mark Reproductive Shabbat is to commit to telling stories of those who have had abortions, and those stories exist in our communities. We should create space for those stories to be shared whenever and only when one is comfortable doing so. We are stigmatized against sharing deep truths about having children, but we can actively combat those stigmas through sharing experiences of pregnancy, postpartum depression, abortion, and loss. We can write about them or share them informally or speak about them. Our experiences are invisible to each other unless we share them. We can mark Reproductive Shabbat by increasing our own sensitivities. We can use inclusive language around parenthood that makes room for single parents or trans parents or queer parents who choose parenthood. We can remember that people have feelings about the number of children they have, or maybe even the lack of children they have. We can commit to understanding that abortion inequity reflects broader patterns of inequity. Today, in states with abortion restrictions, women of color are 3 times more likely to face serious complications from pregnancy, and travel times to reach abortion care have increased by an average of 4 hours for many rural communities. These aren't just statistics. They represent real people in crisis, seeking the very care that our tradition not only permits, but demands that we provide. And so the movement from justification to justice is crucial. It's not enough to say Judaism permits abortion. We must acknowledge that abortion bans deepen every structural inequality that exists and disproportionately harms those already struggling financially, individuals and communities of color, disabled people, young people, trans men, non-binary people, immigrants. We are commanded to create a more just society. Therefore, we must fight for abortion access for everyone. When those 2 students came to me in DC, they weren't asking about Jewish law. They were asking for a framework to understand this devastating moment, for making sacred choices about their bodies and lives. And the answer is yes. Judaism does understand that you have a body and a life to protect, and not just because our legal sources permit it, but because our entire approach to religious ethics demands that we center the voices, experience, and moral agency of those most impacted. The book of Deuteronomy teaches Uvacharta Chaim, choose life. For some, they interpret this verse as choosing the life of the fetus. But for seekers of a compassionate Judaism that centers the sufferer, choosing life means choosing the birthing parent. Choosing life means choosing the full and complex reality of living people, their needs, their wisdom about their own bodies, their right to make sacred decisions about their bodies and their futures. This is not just a political issue. It's fundamentally a human one. Outside of the sanctuary, there are pamphlets on ways to take action this reproductive Shabbat, sending love to abortion care providers, building local relationships, donating to funds for abortion access, and more. I hope that you'll take one of these papers or talk to me about how we can move from justification to justice and provide a more compassionate world for those in need of it. Shabbat Shalom.